I found muddy footprints in my house after a business trip. Then I discovered my cousin had been secretly living there, and what he left behind changed everything. There was a muddy footprint on my bedroom floor. Not my footprint, too big, too narrow. It stood there like an accusation, half-dried and smudged near the edge of the rug, pointed toward the guest bathroom. For a moment, I just stared at it, still holding my work tote, coat sliding off one shoulder, my keys dangling from fingers that suddenly didn't feel steady. I hadn't been home in 3 days. I know how that sounds, dramatic, but when you live alone, every object, every routine, every silence starts to mean something. You know how your house is supposed to feel. And that footprint? That was the first betrayal. I dropped my bag and slowly walked down the hall, checking doors like I was suddenly in someone else's house. Everything looked the same, but wrong. Off by inches. The pillows on the couch had been fluffed. My orchid in the kitchen window had been watered recently. A mug I didn't remember using was in the sink, still damp. And on the counter? A spoon, stirred and rinsed. No coffee. No cereal. Just the hint of someone else's habits layered over mine like a ghost trying to be polite. The only person who had a spare key was my sister, Sam. And Sam hadn't spoken to me in 3 months. Not since she moved out. Not since the argument that ended with her saying she was done being my shadow. I picked up my phone and texted her anyway. Were you here? A few seconds passed. Then, no. Why? I didn't reply. Because the thing is, I didn't believe her. Not entirely. But I also wasn't sure she would have done something like this. If anything, she'd have taken something, not left things behind. I went back to my room and looked again at the footprint. It wasn't just dirty. It was wet. Like someone had been here only a little while ago. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed on the couch, lights off, one eye on the hallway where the bedroom door sat half-closed. I wasn't scared exactly, more unsettled. Like the house itself was holding its breath. Around 3:17 a.m., I heard it. A soft click. Not the kind that comes from the fridge compressor or an old pipe. This was deliberate. Mechanical, like a latch being undone. I sat up, heart hammering, and scanned the room. Nothing moved. No shadows shifted. But I knew I'd heard it. So I got up and walked barefoot across the cold floor to the back patio door, the one with the broken lock I meant to fix weeks ago but never did. The one nobody else knew about. Or so I thought. It was unlocked. I flipped on the porch light. Empty. No wind. Nothing out of place. Then I saw it. On the glass, just above the handle, was the faintest smear, like a thumbprint. Greasy. Fresh. That's when I stopped thinking this was some leftover trace of a friend or old housemate. This wasn't an accident. Someone had been coming in while I was gone. Maybe more than once. And they hadn't stolen anything. They'd cleaned up after themselves. They'd water my plants. I went back inside and shut every window, locked every door, sat on the couch and stared at the hallway. And for the first time I wondered, what if they weren't just using my house? What if they were watching me? By morning, I had convinced myself it was a prank. Or stress. Or maybe I just forgot to lock the door one night, and a raccoon with a taste for artisanal soap got curious. But then I opened the drawer. The one in my nightstand. The one with my passport, a few keepsakes, and the Polaroids from college I never let anyone touch. The photos were gone. In their place was a single note, folded neatly in half. You looked tired. I let you rest. You're welcome. No signature. Just that. I stood there, reading it again and again, until the words started to dissolve into meaninglessness. My hands were shaking. My knees felt soft. I sat down on the bed, breathing through my nose, heart trying to leap out of my ribs. This wasn't a random break-in. This was intimate. Someone knew my schedule. Someone had been here long enough, often enough, to feel comfortable. I checked my phone again, looked at Sam's text. No. Why? If she wasn't lying, someone else had a key, or had found a way in. And they didn't want to hurt me. They wanted to help me, but not in any normal way. That was the moment I realized I had 2 choices. I could call the police. Let them dust for prints, make a report, go through the motions. Or I could find out who it was myself. I chose the second option. I bought new cameras. Hidden ones. Not the flashy kind with blinking lights, but the kind that blend in disguised as smoke detectors and clock radios. I installed one in the kitchen, one in the hallway, and one directly above the guest room door. And then I left again. Just for a night. Just to see if they'd come back. As I pulled away from the house and watched it disappear in my rearview mirror, my heart was pounding with something I couldn't quite name. Fear, sure. But also something darker. Curiosity. I watched the footage 5 times before I let myself believe it was real. At exactly 2:42 a.m., the clock camera in the guest room flicked into night vision. 30 seconds later, the door creaked open. Slowly, deliberately, a person stepped inside. They moved with eerie calm, like they belonged there. Hoodie pulled low, face obscured. But it wasn't random. They walked straight to the closet, opened it like they knew what was inside, then pulled out one of my old hoodies and hugged it. Not stole it. Hugged it. Then they sat down on the edge of the bed. Quiet. Still. For 47 minutes. Just sat there breathing. I watched their shoulders rise and fall, slow and steady, like they were meditating or mourning. And then, just before leaving, they placed something on the nightstand. I paused the frame. Zoomed in. A shell. A small conch shell, pink and ivory. The kind you'd find at tourist beach stands. I recognized it immediately. It used to sit on my childhood windowsill. It had been missing for years. I checked the kitchen cam next. It showed them entering the front door with a key. Not forced. Not picked. A key. My spare was in the lockbox outside. Hidden, yes. But not locked anymore. They must have found it weeks ago. Maybe months. The hallway cam gave me the clearest angle. Tall, lean. Long fingers. Their gait was familiar. Too familiar. I played the footage again, this time looking for details. Shoes, posture, the subtle way they closed the fridge door like they knew it squeaked. And I felt my blood run cold. Because I knew who it was. It wasn't Marina. It was Nate. My cousin. I hadn't seen Nate in over a year. Last I heard, he was couch surfing, out of work, and spiraling. He used to be the charming one in our family, my older cousin by 3 years, always the favorite at reunions. Everyone loved Nate. But when his mom passed and his dad remarried a woman half his age, something in him cracked. Quietly. He stopped answering calls. Stopped showing up. Eventually stopped being the Nate I remembered. And now? Now he was using my guest bed like a haunted hotel room. I didn't call the police. Not yet. Instead, I drove to my aunt's old house. It had been empty since she passed, but her garden still bloomed like someone was tending it. A neighbor told me Nate had been staying in the old tool shed out back. No power. No plumbing. Just a mattress and 2 duffel bags. I stood at the edge of the overgrown lawn, my heart trying to bolt out of my chest, and knocked on the toolshed door. No answer. I knocked again. And then it opened, slowly, hesitantly, and there he was. Same shaggy hair. Same sad eyes. But thinner now. Tired. He stared at me like I was the ghost. "You shouldn't be here," he said. I saw the footage. He blinked, swallowing hard. I thought I was careful. "You were," I said. "Too careful." We stood there in silence for a long beat. Wind rustled the trees. A wind chime rang weakly in the distance. "I didn't steal anything," he said finally. "I just needed somewhere quiet. Somewhere that felt like home." "My home, Nate. I know. I'm sorry." He looked down, ashamed. "I couldn't sleep. Not at the shelter. Not at Aunt Lou's. But your place, it was like I could breathe there." "Why not ask me? Would you have said yes?" I didn't answer. Because honestly, I wasn't sure. And that scared me more than anything. I didn't let him come back with me that night. But I didn't call the police either. Instead, I drove home in silence, Nate's words echoing through the cab of my car like static. It was like I could breathe there. That should have made me furious. But what I felt instead was something more complicated. He hadn't taken anything. He hadn't trashed the place. He just existed inside it, like a ghost trying to relive a better time. Still, I didn't sleep. I kept checking the cameras even though I knew he wouldn't come back. And, in the morning, I found something else. It was tucked into the back of my linen closet, behind a stack of towels I hadn't used in months. A spiral notebook. One of mine, but repurposed. Its pages were now filled with Nate's handwriting. He'd been journaling. The entries started 5 months ago. First night. She's not home. Everything's quiet. The soap smells like she used to, lemon and clean. Didn't sleep in the bed tonight. Just sat. The couch is too soft. Her plant is still alive. I thought it would have died like the others. She's doing better than me. I'm glad. Page after page of quiet, observant notes. Reflections. Some strange, others heartbreakingly raw. He wasn't obsessed with me. He missed belonging. He missed before the family splintered, before the funeral, before the breakdowns no one in our family talked about. Before the world felt like it had quietly disowned him. I closed the journal. Numb. I didn't want to be part of this. I didn't want to understand. But now I did. I sat in the kitchen staring at the shell he left me. The stupid, innocent token from our shared childhood. And I realized something. This wasn't about him breaking into my home. This was about him trying to return to one. 3 days after finding the journal, I called my sister. Sam always had the backbone I lacked. If I was the caretaker, she was the one who packed her things and never looked back. She picked up on the second ring. I need your help, I said. Are you okay? She asked immediately, voice alert. You sound off. I found someone in the house. It was Nate. Long silence. Then, tell me you called the cops. I didn't. Another pause. This one colder. Why not? I told her everything about the footprint, the unlocked door, the shell, the journal. I expected her to yell, to laugh, to say, I told you so. But she didn't. She sighed. You always do this, she said finally. You always let people camp in your life just because they knock quietly. He's family. Family? Her voice cracked. Where was family when you were scraping together rent while Dad was in rehab and Nate was off crashing on couches? Where was family when I left and nobody noticed for a week? I said nothing. You don't owe him your house, she said, her voice softening just a notch. Especially not after he took it without asking. He didn't mean harm. That doesn't matter. He made you feel unsafe. That's the only thing that matters. I didn't argue, because she was right. And also, somehow, not. That night, I stood in the guest room for a long time. The bed was still made. The shell was still there. And I realized the question I'd been avoiding since this started. Did I want to shut the door forever? Or open it just once, and see if he'd walk through it the right way? I left the back patio light on. It was the smallest gesture. The kind of thing you only notice when you're looking for a sign. And I guess I wanted to give Nate just that one last chance to do it right. And he did. Sort of. He knocked. At 10:41 p.m., I heard the knock on the patio door, soft and almost sheepish. I was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a mug of lukewarm tea, staring at the untouched dinner I'd made out of some misguided optimism. I didn't get up right away. I just stared at the door. He stood there in the yellow glow, his hoodie pulled down, hair damp from the mist outside. He looked like a kid again. Like the version of Nate who used to pull me into the living room to reenact movie scenes with a flashlight and a paper crown. When I opened the door, he didn't speak. I handed him a jacket. Come inside, I said. But this time, you sit at the table. We sat across from each other in silence. I didn't want to scare you, he said finally. You didn't, I lied. You unsettled me. That's worse. He nodded. I didn't know where else to go. Then you should have asked. I thought you'd say no. Maybe I would have. But at least it would have been honest. He looked down at the table. I just wanted to feel normal again. I could have said a dozen things, angry things, pitying things, anything to assert my place as the wrong party. But none of them mattered. Because in that moment, looking at him, the shadow of who he used to be, I didn't see a threat. I saw someone who never found his way back. I exhaled. You can stay, I said.
For now.
But only if we set rules. And if you ask before you open a single drawer. He looked up. His eyes were wet. I can do that. And for the first time in months, I felt something in the air shift. Not forgiveness. Not resolution. Just a fragile truce. It's been 2 weeks since Nate moved into the guest room, officially this time. He got a job last Thursday at the hardware store off Pine. It's part-time, and he smells like cedar and glue every time he comes home. But he's different now. Lighter, in a way. Still quiet, but less ghostly. We keep boundaries. I keep the cameras, though now he knows. He actually waved at one the other day with a smirk, like we were both in on the same joke. It's not perfect, but it's real. This morning, I was dusting the living room when I knocked over a decorative box on the bookshelf. It spilled open. Inside was something I hadn't seen in years. The original shell. The one from my childhood. The one I thought Nate had left on my nightstand. I froze. I picked it up, turned it over. Same tiny chip on the edge, same markings. Which means the one he left wasn't mine. I went to his room.
Knocked.
Hey, where did you get that shell you left? He looked up from his sketch pad and said, without blinking, Mom's garden. She kept a box of them in the shed. I thought you'd remember it. I didn't. And suddenly, that feeling returned, that tiny flicker of something not quite right. He hadn't meant to bring me my shell. He'd brought me his. The house is quiet again tonight. Peaceful. But sometimes, when I walk past the guest room, I swear I still feel that early tension, like the air remembers what it used to hold. And when I fall asleep, I think of that line in his journal. She's doing better than me.
I'm glad.
It wasn't a threat. It was a goodbye he never said out loud. Update. 2 months later. Nate moved out last week. Left a note on the fridge. Thanks for letting me stay until I could stand up again.
No signature.
Just that. He left behind one thing on the nightstand. A photo. Us, ages 8 and 11, grinning on a beach somewhere. In the corner, he'd scribbled, "You always made places feel like home." And just like that, he was gone again. No big scene. No closure. But this time, he left through the front door. Some ghosts aren't here to haunt us. Some are just looking for a light to follow home.